This is Launching Your Daughter podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here is today's episode. Episode 68. Well, welcome everybody. In today's episode, there's going to be something very different than what I've done in the past. I actually am interviewing two authors, Brenda and Susan, and we discuss the books that they have written together and how storytelling can actually help support families of age groups 4 to 8. And their daughters may struggle with some anxiousness or being a picky eater, and how to shift that, change that, and create some healthier habits. I really enjoyed speaking with both of them. And this to me is, again, the proactive stance of how we can start shifting some of those thoughts early on versus waiting until the girls are much older. So I hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, parents, if you are feeling really stuck or concerned about what to do, feel free to email me at nicole@launchingyourdaughter.com if you would like some parent coaching, and we can go from there. Enjoy the episode. Well, welcome everybody. I am very excited because today I have two guests on. One is Susan Sweet, who is a PhD, and another one is Brenda Miles, who is also a PhD. Together, they have written multiple books, and today we're going to actually talk about 3 different ones. But before I share the titles with you, let me introduce us a little bit more about Susan and Brenda. So Susan is a clinical child psychologist and a mother of 2. She has worked in a hospital, school, and community-based settings and is passionate about children's mental health and well-being. Susan hopes worries never overshadows anyone's dreams. And Brenda is a pediatric neuropsychologist who has worked in a hospital, rehabilitation, and school settings. Brenda has conquered her fear of writing despite the risk of rejections, revisions, and writer's block. As for her other fears, well, she's still working on them, which I think all of us are, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm very excited. I know this episode is going to be a little different than what I typically do because usually Launching Your Daughter focuses on more tween and teenage girls. But I thought this would be great because what Brenda and Susan are doing in these books is really being so proactive in trying to stop the anxiety from growing, where it becomes more kind of hardwired and sometimes more challenging to work through. And so I'm really excited to have you both on today.
Well, thank you very much for having us. Yes.
Yeah. So I would like it if you both would share just a little bit more about yourselves and what made you both write all these books together.
So Brenda and I actually worked together at a children's hospital years ago, and then we ended up at the same school board. So we kind of had a history together, and Brenda was quite open about her writing. I was a little more guarded about admitting that I was writing. So one day I finally fessed up to Brenda, and we said, wouldn't it be fun to do something together? We threw around a few ideas, and we came up with the idea for our first princess book, which was on picky eating. So we loved the book. It was a lot of fun. And then we wanted to sort of build on that and create a whole series around sort of fractured fairy tales, modern retellings of fairy tales. And we just thought that would be such a great vehicle for some of the psychology information. So we really saw a way to combine the background we have in psychology with our love of writing and kind of bring those two things forward together in a way that we hope is helpful for families. So that was how it all started.
Absolutely. And I will jump in and say it's been a great privilege working with Susan, who has great expertise in issues like anxiety. And she also has great creativity, and there's been a wonderful synergy working with Susan, because often when you have sort of expert knowledge, you tend to be very formal in your thinking, and it's been really fun to diverge into something much more creative and something more child-friendly when we're trying to combine what we know about psychology in very formal terms with creativity that is translatable for children as young as 4 years of age. So it's been great fun.
Awesome.
It's definitely different from the day-to-day reports we're writing at work.
I can imagine.
Without question.
Well, let me back up for just a second for our listeners, because I had forgot to state the books, the 3 books I have sitting in front of me, which the illustrations are just beautiful. I love them. So one of the books that you had referred to, Susan, was the Princes Penelopea Hates Peas. It's a tale of picky eating and avoiding Catastropeas, which I love the little add-on there. And then we have Cinderstella, a tale of planets, not princes. And then the last one I've got here is Jacqueline and the Beanstalk, a tale of facing giant fears. I love the titles of all of these. So, ladies, how did you decide where you wanted to focus more on the younger age group versus maybe something a little older for parents to be able to read, or school staff or any caregivers of girls? How did you guys decide on that age group?
Susan, you want to take that?
Sure, I'll start.
Perfect.
So, in the field of psychology, early intervention and prevention are really, really important. And more we're realizing over time that the great opportunity we have when children are young to build those healthy habits, to create a strong foundation, to give them the skills they need to be resilient. So picture books are really a fantastic opportunity for that, to convey some psychological content in a fun way. We really wanted these to be books not just that parents and teachers pulled down off a shelf, but that children would want to read as well. So we thought, why not get in there early? Why not build those habits right from the start instead of trying to correct things later on? And picture books are a fantastic vehicle for that, because as opposed to some other books that children might read in their teenage years, we tend to read them over and over again, right? So some children can often recite their favorite picture books by memory. So they're a really great way to have a conversation with kids, to open a dialogue, to communicate with them in a language that makes sense to them. And the picture format also makes it accessible. And I know you mentioned our illustrator, Valeria DeCampo, who we love. She just has the perfect style for picture books. She's so whimsical, and we've been really fortunate to have her on all 3 books.
Oh, I love that. And what you were just saying too, Susan, that kids, the younger age group, they go back and reread and reread and reread. So it's really helpful to kind of, kind of plant the seeds, as we say in usually the psychology world, of being able to say, here's how you can master this, or here's how you can overcome this. Again, the earlier we do it, the more skills the kids have as they continue to get older, and they face other stressors as they grow up.
Well, we're really learning that, mental and physical health are 2 sides of the same coin, right? They both contribute to overall health. And just like we can work on our physical health, we can develop habits to feel healthier physically, we can do that with our mental health as well. We've sort of thought that, we'll wait until there's an issue and then we'll get in there and work on it. But now we're realizing there's a whole opportunity for the field of positive psychology. So we can actually help people be well. And children love this idea. They love the idea that you can work on being well, not just wait to have something go wrong and then you need some help and support, but you can actually work on feeling better.
Oh, and I love that. Again, being proactive and the positive psychology of there are ways and tools to prevent these things from other mental health issues kind of getting more severe by changing some of those thought patterns, changing some of those behaviors earlier on, and also setting the parents up to really succeed too in being able to do this. They become more aware as they're reading through these books of, oh, okay, I can change how I say this, or okay, I can remind my daughter of this. So I love that.
Yeah. And I think if I could, I'm sorry, Susan.
Go ahead, Brenda.
I think if I could add in, and Susan mentioned that these books are fun. I mean, they're fun to write, and we really hope for parents and children that they're fun to read. And I think to sort of just talk about the brain and craving stories. The brain craves stories to make sense of information. And I think picture books are wonderful examples of bite-sized storytelling. And when we think about the popularity of TED Talks, for example, 18 minutes. In 18 minutes, you can pack huge amounts of information into a very simplistic yet fascinating story arc. And I think that's what I love about co-writing picture books with Susan, because we've got all of this psychology information that we can think about and know about to promote mental health. But how do we pack it into a bite-sized story where all the main elements are there? Sometimes we can't get all the pieces in. That's impossible if you've only got a few hundred words. So we also add parent notes for caregivers and teachers at the back so that we have sort of strategies that spin out of the story and spin out of our knowledge of psychology as an added sort of storytelling element for them to help their kids.
Well, and I thank you so much, Brenda, for adding that. You're so correct when it comes to the storytelling and pictures. I know I'm a very visual learner. And so sometimes, hearing the story is one thing, but I may not remember it as well as when I actually see things kind of enacted, whether it's live or through a picture. So I love how you're really trying to also let parents and caregivers know that this is a really good way of being able to empower their girls and them as they read these books. I love that.
Absolutely. And Valeria DeCampo, as Susan already mentioned, did a spectacular job. Her pictures are pieces of high art as far as we're concerned. They're gorgeous.
And I so agree with all of that. Yeah, they're just beautifully done. What, over the years, as the two of you kind of worked together, as a collaboration, but also separately, what are some of the things that maybe fears, questions you've heard from parents about what they can do to try and help their daughters, or what maybe they struggle with when they start to see kind of those stress levels go up, fears go up, or all of a sudden, they no longer want to eat the foods that they used to? What are some of the concerns parents may have about those kind of topics that you guys have heard over the years?
I think parents today put a lot of pressure on themselves, and they really want to do the right thing for their children. They really want their children to be happy. They want them to have opportunities. They're really striving to do their best. And so we hope our books really have a tone of no judgment. I think parents, they need support, not judgment. And I love the idea of, what fears might they have? What might they need? What might they want? Because that's not asked very often. I think it's a very important question. So I think a lot of parents worry about, when should I address something? Is this just a typical childhood kind of bump? Will we move past this, or should I be reaching out for support? They're wondering about that meter stick. A lot of parents don't have a background in child development. Maybe they don't work with children through their day-to-day job. So they really want some perspective, sort of a sounding board, a meter stick to help them figure out when they should reach out for support, which we do try to address in each of our parent notes. They want their children to have the skills to be successful, so they really want some help with that. They don't have a lot of time. I remember, as you mentioned, I do have two children. I remember when my children were young, some days it was a success just to boil an egg. So they don't have time to be going through all the literature, all the parenting books, reading on each individual topic. It's just not realistic for them. So having someone kind of distill it down into a 2-page snapshot of information they can rely on, because there's so much information on the internet, and having them be able to put some trust in that and know that it's coming from a vetted source, knowing it's coming from a professional who works in the area. Imagination also uses a group of other professionals to kind of vet each book as well, a committee of experts, so parents can be confident in what they're reading. So I think having someone distill all that information and take it down to the bare bones for them, helping them decide, here's a few things you can work on. If these don't work for you, maybe it is time to reach out for support. So just having a little bit of guidance, having a little bit of help navigating, it is a really challenging thing to be a parent or a caregiver. So really having someone just help them a little bit with things that might be on their mind.
Yes. As you were talking, I'm looking at the back of one of the books, and you have, 2 pages, basically like 2.5 pages of information for parents and caregivers. And I think you've hit it. Sometimes you don't know really what to ask, but there's a concern, like you said, is this a normal for this age group? Is it not normal for this age group? So knowing that these sources are coming from, qualified folks who have the degree, who work in these fields, it helps kind of put that at ease for parents when they go through this. And if they're really struggling, as you were saying too, or alluding to, that it's okay to get additional professional help if you, the parent or caregiver, are needing some support, or needing maybe your child to have a psychological evaluation just to make sure they're doing okay, or to check that out, so that can relieve their concern as well.
Absolutely. We always say it's a sign of strength to reach out for support. It's not a sign of weakness. And it may just be someone telling you everything is on track, and that this is just part of childhood, and that can make you feel better. Or if it's more than that, they can give you some steps to take so that you know you're addressing it to whatever degree you can, which will also help parents. So it's sort of a win-win, but it is, it is, it's a brave thing. We understand when parents reach out for that kind of support. They haven't done it before. It's new territory for them. So again, we really want that to feel supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brenda, did you want to add anything? I know I kind of jumped in there really quick after Susan had stopped.
No, I think Susan did a spectacular job answering that question. I will say that we try in our stories to distill very complicated information into a simple and compelling story arc, but we never in any way are aiming to minimize what can be sort of very serious difficulties in some cases. For example, when it comes to eating or anxiety. And an important message at the end of every parent note, absolutely, is if these strategies are not working, if your child is dealing with challenges that are bigger than we can address with the strategies in the book, then absolutely it's very important to seek out professional help.
Yeah, and thank you for adding that, Brenda, because you're absolutely right. You both have done such an incredible job of being able to take these bigger issues, and you're not minimizing whatsoever, but making it in a more kind of, I guess, digestible, readable type of form to inform not only the little girls, but also their parents and the caregivers. And yeah, if they need more support, to definitely reach out and get that for sure.
Absolutely.
So, ladies, I'm really curious. Do you have, based on, I have no doubt in my mind, the way you ladies are really creating these books, I'm sure you have more coming along too, but I am curious, are there other, I guess, kind of pieces of advice or words of encouragement that you sometimes will offer parents of young girls if they are, maybe you're kind of noticing, oh, they're kind of picky eaters, or you can see kind of that self-esteem taking a hit or anxiety starting to come up? Are there things that you often find yourself stating to the parents or caregivers to encourage them, or kind of saying things are going to be okay type of things?
I think a lot of parents worry about anxiety, and the message that we would give if a child really is struggling with anxiety is that it can absolutely improve. Mm-hmm. And just because you're struggling with it at one point in time doesn't mean that's a roadmap for your life. It's not, it doesn't need to be limiting. It can actually be something that you can address, you can work on, and make it work for you. Anxiety can actually be a very helpful thing if it's in a manageable range. It's meant to keep us safe. It's meant to help us make good decisions. It's useful. We're not aiming for zero. So having parents understand that, some anxiety is actually okay. We can use that. That can be helpful. And if it's a little too much, it's absolutely something that will respond to strategies. So it doesn't need to be something that's going to dictate or limit your child in life. So sort of saying, it's very common. It doesn't reflect on their skills as a parent. All kinds of children in all kinds of different families struggle with anxiety, and just calming that and letting them know that you're going to partner with them and help them through that can really help. And they're not alone. Sometimes it's very surprising to families how common anxiety is. Mm-hmm. And often with mental health issues, people can feel very alone. We don't talk about them as much as a physical health issue. They're not visible on the outside. Mm-hmm. So we can't see that others are struggling with it as well. And actually, it's very common. It's part of the human experience. It's something we can address. And just even knowing that sometimes can help families a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Just what you're talking about, what we call is normalizing it, that you're not alone in this, that sometimes it is just a typical kind of developmental thing that comes through, but it's also very manageable. And we can't wipe out anxiety. Not because that's, again, our brain is wired to that way. And Brenda, I'm sure you can speak more to this for us, but it's more of, it needs to alert us if there really is danger. So if we were totally calm and nothing ever kind of stirred us, we might be really in a face of danger and be like, yeah, that's great. And instead we need to actually respond quicker to that.
Without question, anxiety is an important part of survival. I will say, though, I really appreciated Susan's response. She has great expertise in therapy and counseling around anxiety. From my perspective as a pediatric neuropsychologist, the adolescents and children that come into the clinic where I work currently have other challenges, things like challenges focusing. They often come in with learning disabilities. And so as a pediatric neuropsychologist, I'm trying to sort of think about what are the sources of the anxiety. Now, certainly in generalized anxiety disorder, you can be anxious about many, many things. But there's also students with comorbid learning disabilities, for example, or significant challenges with attention, who are struggling in schools because nothing is easy. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes targeting or treating anxiety also has to come with treating those other factors that are contributing to making children feel anxious. And I often say to parents, well, I never had too much difficulty reading, but athletics were never my strong suit, unlike my sisters. So for me, it would be very anxiety-provoking to be going to an Olympic training camp every day where I was terribly clumsy and not too coordinated or athletic. And so going into a school where reading is the order of the day is very difficult if you haven't cracked that code. And so I'll tell parents from a brain-based perspective that we can rewire the brain with certain evidence-based interventions to improve reading immensely. And that also becomes part of treating issues of anxiety that are comorbid with learning challenges as well.
Oh, thank you for adding that, Brenda, because it's absolutely true that if we don't know, sometimes there's a source that is generating the anxiety, and if that's not being explored or talked about, their daughters really, they can stay very anxious throughout the school year. And so if you figure out, okay, they're having more struggles in reading or processing issues or just feeling really overwhelmed with math and not sure how to get it, there's ways to work with that, which helps them feel more empowered, and then automatically that anxiety level starts to go down. So thank you for adding that.
Yes, I think as part of any intensive intervention around anxiety, there really has to be intensive exploration about what any potential sources might be. Sometimes they can't be tacked down, but sometimes there are many contributing factors that need to be addressed separately as part of the larger treatment plan.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, ladies, I know we could talk about these because I'm like, oh, we could go into detail on this book. We can go into detail on this book, but I also know we kind of have a time constraint here as well. So I would love it if both of you would share what would be a good way or the best way maybe for the listeners if they want to find out more about you or they want to reach out and, buy these books. Where could they do that? How can they get a hold of you?
So all of our books are available through Amazon and all through the Imagination Press website. So it sounds like imagination, but it's actually imagination, just starting with an M. And you can find all of our books there. I think we have 5 together, and Brenda also has some other books that people can check out as well. So she's very prolific, loves to write, and has lots of great ideas to share with children. So they can find all of those books on those 2 sites.
And is there a way for people to find out where you are, Susan, or get a hold of you?
I have an author page on Facebook, and I do tweet. These are new things for me. If we're talking about anxiety, when I tweet, I often have tweeter's remorse and think, was that a good tweet? So this is all new for me. So I am just dipping my toe in the water, but I do have those 2 things. And can I perhaps send you links to those after the podcast?
Yep,
sure,
and I will definitely put that in the show notes then. And Brenda, how about for you?
Well, there is an author page about me through the Imagination Press website. I'm still working on that website, shall we say. But I think imagination is probably the best way to start in terms of learning more about me as an author and what books are available. And also you can find all of our books on Imagination Press and Amazon.
Excellent. Well, I will put all that in the show notes. And I really appreciate both of you truly role modeling to all the parents out there, right? Whenever we stretch ourselves and whether it's social media stuff or technology, parenting in general, it's saying that we don't have to be perfect to do this. And there's times that we're not going to know necessarily what we're going to do or how we're going to do it. And we can go back and we can repair that and continue to change, improve, modify. It's all okay, that there is no perfect human being on this planet. And so I remind my parents often of that There is no perfect parent, and it's okay not to be perfect. It's embracing those imperfections. So really appreciate you guys sharing. It's like, well, this is a little new to me. All good.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's Pinterest, not Instagram.
Okay.
Pinterest. That's what it is. Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm not perfect and still conquering those fears around technology. That is for sure.
It's all good. Well, ladies, I so appreciate you both being able, I know that the times we were trying to coordinate all of this, I'm glad it was able to happen. I know you both have been on touring and schedules and with your business and everything. So I appreciate you both taking the time and being on this show and sharing your books with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate your interest and taking the time this afternoon. I think, what you're doing is fantastic. I have a daughter and a son, and I would really like to see the same doors open to both of them. So I really appreciate your efforts.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. And I have nieces, and I shout out to my niece, Vanessa, who is studying engineering. So
Awesome.
I'm very proud of her. Yeah, she knows who she is, and there's no qualms about it, and I'm very proud of her. So that's great. Thank you very much for the important work you're doing.
Well, you're very welcome, and I love how she's going into engineering, because I know I've talked a little bit on some previous episodes about STEM, and we need more females in those fields. So I love that she's doing that. That's awesome.
Me too. Thanks.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you found this information helpful regarding using stories and how that repetition of looking at the pictures and reviewing the stories can really help create healthy habits for your daughters. Again, if you're looking for some parenting support, feel free to email me at nicole@launchingyourdaughter.com. Until next time. Thank you for listening to Launching Your Daughter with Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. For more information or to stay up to date, go to launchingyourdaughter.com. You can sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group. Thank you.